if you don't understand the underlying principles, if you don't understand sort of like the fundamental sort of structure of how to work with AI, it doesn't matter how good the tools are because you're not going to be sharp enough to be able to use them. And so like it's sort of a moot point anyways. And so it's like we need to start with the fundamentals. Welcome to the Tourism AI Network, where Josh Huston and I talk about all the things at the intersection of tourism and artificial intelligence. Today, we will be diving a little deeper into some of what we've been talking about in the last couple podcasts, but specifically, we're going to talk about really principles of AI adoption, I think is the good way to describe it. And, prior to hitting record, we were talking about three things: context, prompts, and the models we choose or the models we use. And so I want us to actually start with the third one because that's, I feel like, the easy one to knock off, the models we use. And this is really something that's been on my mind a lot. And Josh, you know that we've made a decision in early 2025 here to completely simplify our AI technology stack. So, in 2024, I was using ChatGPT, I was on Claude, we were playing with Gemini, I was, trying Meta's tools. We had all these low code, no code tools. Like, I mean, it was just like we had this tech stack that was huge, and we were using, Otter for meeting transcription, and we were using Zoom for recording for having meetings, and then we were recording meetings on Zoom and using its tools. And I mean, it was just crazy, right? So my wife and I, Christina, basically said, look, we need to cut down our costs and we need to simplify our business. So we just basically decided, one, we're a Google company, so we got rid of Zoom, we got rid of all of that stuff, and we now use Google exclusively for our meetings, our virtual meetings, and we're using all of the tools baked into Google, like the transcription tools, which, by the way, honestly, Google's transcription tools, I think, are the best on the market. They capture the conversation really, really well. They don't miss stuff. They don't. Anyways, they're really good. So that's just my plug for Google's tools. I think they've improved. And what's cool about Google's tools as well is, as a Google company, now I just get an email with the transcript afterwards. I press one button that's like, add to my Google Drive. It's super easy. And probably there's some automations we can do. We haven't dug into that yet, but really, really clean, easy, integrated, super nice. And then obviously ChatGPT has been the tool we've been we've been in pretty heavily already, and we've doubled down. And obviously ChatGPT has some new features and functions. So anyways, long story short, I think all I want to say on the tools and on the model conversation is, especially if you're new to AI, it's like just pick one and learn it. I've told this story many, many times, but I ask people, and still, even like yesterday, I was in a meeting where we have taken this company through training. We've shown them all of the features and functions of ChatGPT. And I asked them, are you using these, are you using custom GPTs? Have you done your custom instructions? And the answers were no. And one of the questions I asked, and it was an interesting answer, is like, why aren't you doing that? And it's like, well, these tools keep changing, and I want to. I'm kind of waiting until they're done being changed before I really dig into them. And I was like, no, wrong. These tools will constantly be changing and evolving, and you need to learn them now and get really good at them to really drive the value out of them at the end of the day. Right? Maybe I'll just let you jump in on the tools conversation quickly, and then we'll move on to the core part of this podcast, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the overall theme we've seen, and we tested this with my team as well, when you add a bajillion tools, every tool you add becomes one more thing that either sits on the shelf or is like pulling your focus and attention if you use it. And that's okay. When you drill down on the essence of like models and using the best of the best, all the main providers, and OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, like their focus is to help us as users get as much out of the chats that we have as possible. And as things have gotten way better in the last year, the kind of differences between each provider's offer, like their best available models, is very, very little at this point. It's almost a matter of preference. So that's when you say we're now, we're committed to ChatGPT, we're going to be using the OpenAI chat models for our work. You're not leaving like opportunity on the table with that. The only downside and risk is like if there's an outage for a day, like if you're that reliant, but more importantly than the tool itself, what you're encouraging your staff and what you're starting to lean into and really focus from like, okay, let's be like generalists that know how to use a lot of different things. We're focused on the principles of AI intuition development, which is learning patterns that we know work, that AI is good at, and focusing on those things versus like looking for the next tool that might do something automatically, or it might do something on its own. So it's really changing the onus from like finding the perfect tool or waiting for a platform to get to a specific point,
Yeah.
and shifting the focus to like each and every one of us getting better at using the tools we have. It's like I'm not going to use my hammer until they've come out with the right color hammer that I want. It's like
Right.
that's kind of the same conversation. That's the same comment in like the building industry. Is like, well, if you learn how to swing a hammer with the hammer that you were given first, when a new better hammer comes out that's like truly transformational, like you're going to be comfortable swinging that hammer already, and you're going to be able to utilize, say there's 3 or 4 new things it can do. You're going to be able to focus on those 3 or 4 new things versus like learning to swing the hammer for the first time. So this
Yeah.
idea, it's interesting that is like it came out in your staff meeting, is like there are still people kind of hesitant because they think it's about like AI is going to make it easier to use AI, which is somewhat true, but it's not going to be so different from where it is now. Like the models we have are very, very capable,
Yeah.
and we see them helping a lot. So
And
I
I
think
think to
that's
your
a key point.
And I think to your point, Josh, it's like, yes, the AI tools will get better and they'll get better at helping us use AIs. But if you don't understand the underlying principles, if you don't understand sort of like the fundamental sort of structure of how to work with AI, it doesn't matter how good the tools are because you're not going to be sharp enough to be able to use them. And so like it's sort of a moot point anyways. And so it's like we need to start with the fundamentals. And I just want to make a comment about because you mentioned sort of when there's a down like a, when the tools go down and I actually had this with ChatGPT this morning. I guess it went down yesterday and this morning
Yeah,
it wasn't
they're
working
in it.
and I needed to use it. And but as a Google, what's awesome about Google is now if you're a Google G Suite customer, I think they call it Google something else. I forget the name. Workplace
Works.
customer.
Yeah, works.
They've now baked in Gemini into their tool. So you know what? I just pivoted to Gemini, but we're going to talk about this. I have some context briefs. I have some files set up. I have stuff ready to go that no matter what the tool is, I can keep doing my job. And frankly, Meta's free, so I can always jump to Meta if I need to. So the tools, there's lots of tools out there, but you need to understand the principles and the concepts to use the tools effectively and be able to pivot if you need to. And again, I think it's important for people not to get hung up on tools because there's a lot of, as we've talked about, a lot of noise and a lot of distraction, and quite frankly, a lot of people trying to sell companies on a bag of goods. And you and I have talked about this a lot. It's like, yeah, we can go and build you a million things, and we can make things amazing for you, but if you haven't built your AI muscle and your AI intuition, you're not going to use them anyways. And so, you know what I mean? We're talking about habit change here in
Yeah.
fundamentally, right? So, all right. So let's talk about context and prompts. And Josh, you, I think, kind of have a good kind of way of thinking about this. So I'll let you take the lead on this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll caveat the models have gotten good enough that having mega prompts or super rigid prompt frameworks is not necessary to get something good out of your chat. Um, that's like an axiom now. Like that's a principle we believe in, is that in order to help you, what the model needs more than anything is context. It needs the right amount of context, not too much, not too little. Meaning, we can upload a 100-page PDF document to a chat and say, let's talk about this, and it could look at all 100 pages in just a matter of seconds, and you can ask it questions. It'll find information inside of that file. Great. That's a lot of context. And like as a human, if someone hands you like a 100-page guide to do something, you're gonna, if you have to actually like ingest it all, you're gonna take like a week. Like if you need to understand that file, it's gonna be like, all right, I need to chew on this, I need to like look at it, I need to like think about it, like start, stop, pause. So it's amazing that AI can take that in seconds and go through that same thing, to the point where you could ask it questions and kind of quiz it on that file information, right? So that's something that we see as a success pattern. AI
Can
can
I
look at,
pause you there and ask a question?
yeah,
Just in your experience, Josh, you talk about the 100, call it page
yeah,
context or the 100-page report or whatever that you want to sort of, kind of understand to be able to do your job better. Obviously, a human isn't very good at digesting and sort of remembering and sort of figuring out how to utilize that full 100 pages really well. Do you think it's the same with AI tools? Like, is like a 100-page really detailed document too much to be feeding into like an AI tool to get the most out of it? Or do you think it's better to do a little bit of work on that 100 pages to distill it down into the, 20 most important pages and then feed that to the AI?
I think it's a combination of both those things that you said. I think it's first giving it to AI because it can ingest and read all of that. and it can find specific information inside of it. A really helpful thing if you want to do something with all that information, or say you only need parts of it and you're looking for like insight or a pattern or a summary, it's asking AI to go ahead and do that part of the work for you too. So if it's like, I really just need to pay attention to what's in chapter 4 of this 10 chapter document, and inside of chapter 4 I'm specifically interested in this information, if you ask that of the chat, it's going to give you a great response, because
Mm.
once again, now it has context of what to do with this file. If you just say, read it, analyze it, be ready to help, it's gonna be like that's what it'll kind of, and I say that it'll respond and be like, I have reviewed the document and I am ready to help. What do you want? So it's like teed up to do something now. It's not just reading was the action. What do you want to do with this? So it's, I think, a combination of like, you can give it that full file, but you want to like simplify what you're asking it to do with you as you look and work in that file. So that's like, we talk about context and not trying to provide too much information, because if you were just like, hey, I love all the information in this 100-page document, but it's like, say, a different company's like ebook and you want to write a similar version, if you just ask AI to rewrite that 100-page thing for you, it would be like, if you told it to do it all at once, it would definitely not do a good job.
Right.
If you ask it to help you make a plan to break it down and maybe work on chapter at a time, section by section, it's going to be able to do that, but it's going to eventually require you to move outside of just one conversation, because the context of like, literally, we call it token usage. We try to avoid getting too technical in this conversation, but like, you'll run out of tokens and it'll just stop
Right.
remembering parts of the chat way up the way.
Let's just use pages here, Josh. So let's just, roughly 300 pages is sort of what ChatGPT can handle in context.
Right.
And so if you feed it 299 pages, and then it
That's,
won't have any context left to work with you, right?
yeah, it
So
just kind of slides
less
the text window.
more focused context probably is better in terms of getting more out of the tool, is kind of what I'm just trying to get at
Totally.
here. Yeah.
Totally. And when we talk about context and you're saying like, oh, my ChatGPT went down and I have some context files on hand, what we really are talking about, and this is how we help people when we coach them, we help people build the like 1 to 5 page briefs. Briefs is like a really cold word, but we use it because it's like very truthful and accurate. Context briefs about the like who they are in their organization, what their organization does, how they help people, these things that are like, if you've ever built like a company strategy document, this is what we want AI to understand about us, because it can utilize that context and information to know, basically assume a role on the team helping that same mission. If you say, my company helps make AI adoption simple for folks, and we do that by taking out the jargon and teaching the basics and helping people understand success patterns and quick wins, it's going to be like, I'm on this team too, let's do it. And not like, and therefore it's going to change the way that it behaves and talks and writes to gear towards that agenda, right? So when we give
So,
it a context brief, we don't have to do as much prompting.
right.
All of that was in a prompt. I could spend like 20 minutes writing each prompt, and that's not going to really speed up my workflow. But
Yeah.
if I write down my context about my company once, save it in a Google Doc on my computer, download folder, when I open my I can then load it back in. And I say download folder because, yes, some tools can directly connect to your online, like your Google Drive or your OneDrive. But we like to assume like it's universally helpful. If I store that on my computer, I can always retrieve it in any AI tool.
Yeah. So maybe I'm going to give a really concrete example of something I did literally in the last
Yeah.
2 days here, and I'm noticing a huge difference. So I used to have a Peter's Personal Brand GPT, and so again, just for context for anybody who isn't aware, a GPT is inside ChatGPT. You can create kind of like a mini version of ChatGPT that's based on just a very specific kind of set of context or information. And so I used to have a Peter's Personal Brand GPT, and it had all this different information about it and about me and all this kind of context, and it was okay. But I, in the last couple of days, decided I'm going to make a very specific GPT focused only on LinkedIn. And so for what I did for context is I used ChatGPT to come up with basically like my ideal marketing persona.
Mm-hmm.
And for everybody's background, I have like 3 marketing personas for Tourism AI Network, but I want to just focus on one for my own LinkedIn, right? So
Yeah.
it helped me create a marketing persona. So, who's my target audience? What do they care about? what kind of message, what kind of problems they have that they're trying to solve, that whatever. So I created one document that's all about my customer or who I'm trying to reach with my LinkedIn posts, and then I created a second document which is all about me and like what I'm trying to get across to people, what I'm trying to sell, what I'm trying to like, whatever, right? And those were my two context briefs. Then I put those into my custom GPT and created a, Peter's LinkedIn support GPT to help me write very focused, very kind of consistent LinkedIn content. That's just an example to make it real.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's awesome because I had a weird year. I was like all in on the LinkedIn posts, and then kind of the Christmas came and I kind of like just like lost him, and I was like, I don't know what to write about it anymore. And so I just spent 10 minutes, sat down, and I was like, what am I trying to achieve? Okay, I want basically, so just I'm going to be totally transparent with people. It's like what I've been observing over the last 6 months is people like me. I'm a Generation Xer. I didn't grow up with computers. I'm a people person. I'm a get me out in front of people. So I'm not a IT expert. I'm not a tech bro. I'm not any of these things. Yet I'm leading the tourism AI network, right? But I'm good at public speaking. I'm good at being around people. I'm good at selling. I'm good at, right? And that's actually very typical of a leader of a tourism organization, right? If you're an executive director of a DMO, you're probably not spending your whole day at a computer. You're probably out and about having meetings, talking to people, doing all these things. And you don't need to be a tech bro, right? And so I've decided that that's going to be my focus, is just speaking to people like me that are just trying to lead organizations, and this AI is in their face, right? And so it's been really helpful, right? Because it's super narrow and super focused, right? So that's just, I wanted to give that as an example of what Josh is talking about as something that's really real. And that's just an example of me and my LinkedIn post. But really, if you think about a job or the work you do, every job is really made up of context and tasks to like like a set of tasks to like turn that context into something else, right? Is that how you see kind of work, Josh?
Yep, it's exactly that. In the context you glean in different ways, there's like random things just because you've experienced it before. There's things that you've contacted people about and talked through. And then like context about your organization that like you like historically has been written down. There's artifacts to like look through. So it's like work is that. It's like there's information available, there's information to find to make more available information, and then it's turning that information into like the things that need to get done, which if you think about what needs to be done in work, it's typically like we make files as humans. Maybe that's an oversimplification, but I really haven't found the end of that thread. I've tried pulling the thread a little bit, and it's like, all right, if I'm like a programmer, my job is to like program code. Oh wait, that's inside of files. Okay. If I'm a marketer, I'm going to be making, asset this, asset that, and then posting them on socials. Like, oh, those are files. So it's like, as a strategist, I deliver deliverables, like presentations, reports. That's files. So anything I think work-wise can be broken down into like communication kind of tasks, which if written down become context, and then turning all of that communication into like, what do I owe the people I work for? What am I getting paid to make, which is files.
Yeah.
Oversimplification, but like for the principle of like what we're
Not
doing,
really.
it also is the right thought exercise, I think, because when we talk about changing the way people work and we put AI in the center of the focus to say, what can AI do for us? We look at what information does the AI need to make X file. So
Right.
like your LinkedIn post GPT, there's a prompt. The prompt has access to, and that GPT has access to two files. So in the prompt, you say, here's two files with all the context you need about who I am and what I need to write. And then you tell the AI, and as the user, I'm going to share brainstorm ideas with you. I'm going to look
Mhm.
for like first drafts and we're going to edit and revise together. I'm going to bring ideas and I want to process those ideas into something written, a file. So there's like
Yeah.
three pieces of the equation. Now, when you go to use that tool, you have what it already knows, your context files and what it's supposed to do, like its goal.
Yeah.
It knows that you're going to bring an idea about something you want to say, and it's going to help you package that idea into a file.
That's
And
right.
then you can take that file and run. That, if you haven't looked at it from the like core perspective of like what is work, and like I'm not you, but like the person listening, if you haven't thought of your work like this, it's really hard to imagine how AI is going to help. But
Yeah.
if making the LinkedIn post as your end file and you created a how-to guide for that, and you previously maybe had someone on the team doing that with you, or you didn't have anybody doing it at all, and it was just on you to like sit down and like create something from scratch every day, Like that's a lot more energy, like
Mhm.
personal focus that you're taking away to do this task of make the file for LinkedIn. Now that AI can help you, it's leveraging the success pattern of like context files in, prompt, and idea from you.
So I'm gonna just maybe for the purpose of listeners in the tourism industry, kind of make this, obviously like writing LinkedIn posts is a great use, but let's just say something like, you're doing sales, and so you're doing sales, and you're doing event sales at a hotel, right? So you have a hotel with a conference center, and you're doing event sales. Well, your context is you have a venue, it has so much space, the costs are X, AV, all the things that would go into a successful event, right? That's the context, right? In terms of like what you're able to deliver, right? And then the other context is the client and what their needs, right? So, okay, so you have your set of things that kind of don't really change other than they can be changed based on the client need. And then you have a meeting with clients to walk through your space, and they're going to have a wedding. Okay, it's a wedding. That's one kind of context. They have 150 guests, and it's a sit down dinner. And so those are like some of the other details that matter, right? And so at the end of the day, that information, if set up properly in a custom GPT or a project or whatever in your AI, can help basically turn those two things into sort of a proposal, right? Is that sort of a good example from the tourism industry of how this could work?
Totally, yeah. Because you have examples of like proposals that have worked well in the past. You have the context of your organization, who you're helping. You have the context of this event and how you want it to go. You combine all of those things. If you're into algebra, like think of this as an equation. It's a plus b plus c equals d. And in
Right.
this case, all of those contexts are actually not they're not adds, they're multipliers because every time you add a little bit more information, ChatGPT or the AI, it gets a little bit smarter and it gets a lot more helpful. So the more you add, the better. Now, do you need to add every bit of information you've ever gleaned or organized about this company? No, that would be overkill. But anything that's relevant for this specific example or this specific task at hand of writing the proposal is worth including because it's like bringing on a smart person to your team who just hasn't been given all the context and information yet. Like
Right.
you've onboarded someone really smart. They're like, how can I help? I just need to know what's going on and then I can get to work. And
Yeah.
it's like, this is here's what's going on when we talk about context briefs that we would want and need as a person, but the AI also needs as an AI.
Yeah. Exactly. Nice. Awesome. So we're also going to talk about prompting a little bit, and before we jumped on and hit record, you were kind of talking about if you do context well, your prompting doesn't need to be, I guess, as detailed or as good. So maybe can you kind of dive into that a little bit and help us understand what you mean by that?
Yeah, let's talk about the history of prompting just at a glance. If you rewind like 2 years ago, before like right as ChatGPT was launching, just over maybe say 2.25 like years, um, when you talked to ChatGPT, it had a very limited context window, meaning you could only type so much. Like you could only type like 1,000 words, which is like not a lot of information. And then it would give you a very short answer. And the answer it would give was like wildly variant, like in terms of formatting, in terms of content, and how helpful it was. So it was like if you were going to have ChatGPT do something real and important and helpful, you had to be like really kind of specific and very particular about what you ask it and how. There
Hmm.
was a lot of like prompt hacks and like frameworks that people came up with, like things that we can say to the AI to trick it to do a better job, basically. Because its artificial intelligence level was just like not as good as it is, right? Fast
Right.
forward 1 year to like a year ago, it's getting better. Context windows are increasing. They're adding the ability to load files into the chat. This starts to change how we talk to ChatGPT because it's like, well, maybe I don't need as many prompt hacks because it's a little the models are smarter. Like I don't need to tell it like literally one of the prompt hacks is I mean I always laugh at it. Like this is like save me Obi-Wan, you are my only hope was like a line, like a sentence you could like paste into your prompt and it would be like okay, like it would do a better job. Or if it had this tendency, ChatGPT had this really bad tendency to like ramble and use like jargon that make no sense or make phrases and add like clauses to sentences like, oh, let me delve into that. And you're like, really? Delve has never been used ever. And then like 2023, it was like the top word. and most like papers and stuff, and everybody's like, that's weird. Not weird, because that's what AI was doing.
Yeah.
Um, but if you said no yapping, it would like reduce some of those phrases and terms, and that's like, again, a weird hack. Right. So there was these hacks, there was these like, and there was a whole like conversation that the world was having around in tech, especially about like prompt engineering being the new hot skill. And what people meant by that was like, can you manipulate the AI to say what you want consistently? That was basically what prompt engineering was. And that's because we didn't trust it to basically get there on its own. We had to like baby it and create this really, really, really narrow, specific like ask for that model. So it was like, we could add more context, but we were still doing quite a bit of work asking the AI how to do something for us, or telling it how to do something for us. Fast forward another year, models have gotten significantly better. Once we got into the GPT 4.0 era, like the Omni era, and this class of like GPT 4 class models across the other like providers with like, Anthropic and Google and all that, the amount of prompt time that we actually need to spend to ask ChatGPT to get it to say stuff that the way that we want is a lot less. And when you add in the fact that we can add way more context in terms of files to our chats, and the models are artificially more intelligent now, like it picks up what we put down way faster. So instead of having to make like 1,000-word prompt, even I can make a 1-sentence prompt that's like, hey, using like if I was using your LinkedIn post tool to write some content for you, I could just say, hey, using the context files that you have about Peter's writing style and what he wants to focus on, can you help me write a post about AI success patterns? 1 sentence, and I could get probably a better response than I would have like 2 years ago, just without lifting a finger. So that's why we teach people about context briefs now, is it helps reduce the amount of like generic fluff that comes out of the system. Because if you still like don't give the context, you're going to get short responses or responses that are way too long. So the length is going to be off. You're going to get like somewhat generic or like universally written content that's not really targeting anybody specific. And that's why we add context to kind of reduce the focus for the AI to this specific audience, this specific task that we're working on, and you're partnering with this specific organization who does it a specific way. That's what the context briefs now fill in all the context for. So we don't have to put that into the prompt. It's inherently just like hanging out in the idea of that custom helper, whether it's a custom GPT or a custom project or even just a chat thread that's playing. Like it's really easy to load in all of that information that you've already created once somewhere else. So within like a couple of seconds, you basically like could be up and running. Like if you gave me your 2 files, I could be up and running to help you write LinkedIn content like in a few minutes, because it would just be a matter of like asking the AI to look at those files and then giving it some ideas myself, right? Not that it's like, and that's where it's like the bottleneck now become the like keeper of the ideas. Like the post and ideas you would come up with are going to be different than what I would come up with, because your focus is different. And that I think is something people think a lot about. Like they think this risk of like, well, if that's the case, then why would Peter write anything? Because he could just have someone on his team do it. And it's like, that's not it. Like it's the AI knows how you like to write in your style, but we don't want it to basically come up with all of the ideas for your stuff, because like anybody could do that. So you now get your unique perspective, and it'll help you process that into the right shape.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and hopefully, I mean, yeah, again, like the idea of all of this is to free up your time to, kind of add more of your human value, add your thinking, add your whatever, right? Add your creativity, all those things, right? So, I mean, I think to your point, it's not just like give it to the tool and then walk away and you're done, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so no, that's awesome. So let's maybe kind of just break it down a little bit, Josh, for people, make it really kind of simple. So like a 3.3 sentence, like, okay, I'm listening to this conversation. What do I need to do? Like, if I want to like just get started on my own, like bang, 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 help us kind of understand really granular or like really simply.
Yep. Step 1, create an organizational brief for yourself. So ask ChatGPT to use the web to go to your company website and create an org brief. If you just say it like that, it will do that. It'll look at the website. It'll like identify your values, your mission, your vision, who you help, what your services are. That should be like a page or two. Save it to a Google file. That's step 1. Step 2, load that in to a chat. Say, I want to do X thing, whatever you're working on. I'm writing an email response to somebody. Here's my company brief. that'll get you to experience like that versus not using that context. It'll make a big difference, just that
Yeah,
little one step.
that's great.
The next thing would be create one for yourself. Like you talk
Yeah,
to ChatGPT using maybe voice mode or just like record the transcript button on your phone to it and describe yourself, just ramble. Again, can you help me create a personal profile brief? Here's my resume. Here's my most recent cover letter. I want to make this one, context file. If you just combine a couple of files in your verbal, like, word dump, you can now get a pretty nice personal context brief. And then if you add that personal context brief to your company profile brief and you go back to do that exact same thing again, it's going to be a lot better too.
right.
So on and so forth. If you do those two things, you're golden.
Yeah, I'd add one more. I think it's valuable to add like a persona for, and this is a little bit of a, this is again using my LinkedIn example is like this is who I want to talk to on LinkedIn. So I have a LinkedIn persona brief. Maybe there's a what's my persona to my staff brief because when I'm talking to staff, I want to come across right. There's just a couple of like I think just adding kind of like who you're talking to will be a little bit more better context for the tool to be able to like make sure it's tailoring its responses to the who a little bit so that it's resonating to your target audience. I guess that's we're getting into a little marketing speak or whatever. I will make one caveat to what you said though is make sure your website actually reflects what your company is all about and who you are. But that's a whole
Right.
different conversation.
But
Yeah,
then it's like that's one of those context pieces that if you look and you can validate,
yeah,
is what the internet knows about my organization accurate? If
yeah,
no, damn, you got work to do.
yeah.
Like,
I
and
love
this
that.
is how it's all connected, right? Like, and we'll have companies that we work with, that, tourism orgs that are like this, where they're like, well, that's not us, and you're like, that's what your website said.
That's
Like,
what your online presence says about you. So
so
yeah,
now it gives us something else to focus on, right? And so it helps kind of fill in. Like it's weird by focusing on this context brief thing, it makes you focus on a lot of stuff. Like when we help people write down, like the work we do boils down to this. Like we literally are helping people make their context briefs accurate and get them worded in a way that they're happy with. And then we help them put those files into the like custom project folders in their chat GPT and make a prompt that knows how to access and help them. That's the work. It's like
yeah,
it's that simple because this is the 80-20. We like if there's an 80-20 principle here, it's this 20% of effort of documenting what's happening in the work world that you're in so that the AI can help you with certain things is the 20% effort that gets you 80% of the result.
yeah, yeah,
So when we say boost
yeah.
your productivity, it's like this is what literally like I have a personal example of like I deliver strategy roadmaps for clients through consulting partners and we do a lot of writing. It used to take us like 50 hours to do this with AI, like 50 hours before we were really using the context briefs, just going section by section, writing the prompts, doing all this extra work. Fast forward to now, we have all of our context briefs, probably 20 so files in a project folder. Each one of those files is something that's helpful to the AI, whether it's like, here's what this section is, and here's how we write it, and here's what we're trying to communicate, times my context brief, times the project brief, times the persona brief. It's like all these brief files. It takes us 4 hours, like 4 to 5. And that's a 10x like multiplier. What used to take 50 with AI now takes 5 with better ways of using AI.
Yeah,
And then if you
yeah,
go to like what it took before I used AI, it was like 200 hours.
right.
Like that'd be like
Right.
a couple month project for me.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's like we're a believer. Like the way we help people is what we've been using. Like, and
yeah,
that's something I think we've just agreed on from the very get go. Like, with how we're going to help people with AI is like we're not going to sell you snake oil. We're not going to sell you pie in the sky. We're going to sell you like, hey, this works. I've been using it for 2 years.
yeah, yeah. And I think it's important for people, especially the leaders that are listening to this, the ones that are the not tech savvy people, the people that I'm trying to talk to on LinkedIn, the people that are the executive directors and good with people and all this kind of stuff. I think it's important also to think about how to think about your AI and in the context I'm going to provide here is think about your AI as though it's a staff person or employee, a new employee that's working for you, right? So again, what context do you need to provide a new employee in order to make your employee successful, right? And not more and not less, right? So it's like you need to give them the right amount of information to do the job right and all the right context. And probably you don't want to overwhelm them at first, right? So start with like less is more, and then you can build on it as you go, right? I mean, like it's literally the exact same concept, right? And so, it's like if you just sat down and you thought, okay, I have a new employee, it's called ChatGPT, and these are the 5 tasks I want my new employee to do. It's like, okay, well, what does the new employee need to do those tasks successfully? So if you think about it like that, it really takes away the intimidation of the technology
Mm-hmm.
and really makes it sort of probably you probably have staff. You've probably done this over and over again many times because you've had staff come and go and whatever, right? So think about it like a manager, and then the technology part kind of just becomes easy, I think. And that's a really good way to kind of demystify all of the tech bro kind of language around all of this stuff and kind of make it real for you, right? Does that kind of jive with kind of what your thoughts are here as well, Josh?
Definitely. I think for leaders, it's so important to just not get lost in the AI hype cycles and the like, what is Silicon Valley doing, and like, what are these, news headlines? Like, there's like, if you just kept up with the news headlines, you'd be so overwhelmed
Yeah.
because the news headlines are like across the planes of tech, startups, innovation, investing, like
Politics.
politics, and like
Yeah.
all of that stuff is like important and cool, and like it can be interesting if you're into that, but like when it comes to like using AI to get value for your team, for the people, there's no magic pill, there's no like one tool to rule them all. It's principles and changing the way that you work. And
Yeah.
that is when you focus on like, oh, well, if I had to onboard somebody, I would have to like sit down and spend time with them. I'd have to like make sure that they understood what they were doing, understand who's who in the zoo. Like, that's exactly what we want to focus on
Right.
for the AI to be helpful. It's that it's onboarding enough information so that it can have enough to work
Yeah.
in collaboration with you.
Beautiful. Nice. Awesome. Well, let's leave it there, Josh. I think it was a good conversation. Hopefully, this is helpful to people. If you need any help thinking about AI in this perspective, this is going to be literally our entire focus of 2025 is just simplifying AI for people, making AI approachable in terms of just thinking about it in terms of context and simplifying less models, all that kind of stuff. So everything we've just talked about in this episode is literally going to be our focus and how we teach AI to people in 2025. Because I think Josh and I have spent quite a bit of time together working with clients over the last while, and been just learning more and more that is kind of where people are getting hung up is honestly it's too much. And so the more we can simplify it and make it like more aligned with, again, how we actually work and how we think about work, the more it'll be kind of approachable for people, and I think the more quickly they'll adopt. So that's it for today. Thanks, Josh.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Tourism AI podcast. To learn more about the network or get involved, visit our website at tourismainetwork.com or find us on socials at Tourism AI Network. We'll see you there.